Hello and welcome to the Purpose Matrix. I am excited to talk to Dr. Jeremy Mathis today. Hailing from Columbus, Ohio, Dr. Jeremy Mathis, orthopedic surgeon, focused on sports medicine physician, obviously all kinds of accolades, all kinds of degrees, a lot of schooling. We will talk about schooling, but maybe not in the context of what you might expect from a doctor, honestly. And, former competitive athlete himself, that he's learned a lot of lessons and a lot of things he applies to not just his practice, but his family as well. Dr. Mathis, I will probably call you Jeremy from here on out because he's a good friend of mine. How are you doing today?
Doing great, thanks. Nice, warm, sunny day, so it's always fun.
Jeremy, tell us more about your backstory, kind of upbringing, education, and what led you to today.
Yeah, so I guess I'm a husband and father first, happen to also be an orthopedic surgeon. I like to start with actually probably something that most doctors won't say out loud. So I've watched two partners die. Both were very productive. Both were bringing in cases. Both had personal lives that were falling apart and everybody in the system knew. But nobody said a word because they were productive. The numbers were good. But when they were gone, the machine didn't pause. So it filled their slots the machine filled their slots and kind of moved on. That changed me because I realized I wasn't watching two guys who made bad choices. I was actually watching the default outcome of a profession that defines your value by how much you produce and never asks what you're actually living or how you're actually living. And I was on the same conveyor belt.
Oof.
So a couple of years ago, I started looking for someone ahead of me who had the career and the family.
I'm going to cut you off a bunch here because that was like, punch us in the face. Let's get going. We're going to dig in now. I love it. So Jeremy, I think the system is putting it like there's a default system. The world, society, social media, you name it, is our jobs, our careers. They're trying to bring us in a direction that, like busyness is creating problems too. And we got to be very cautious of that. And you clearly defined yourself and your identity as husband and father first in a very demanding, very intense, I think, occupation. Is this a healthcare industry issue? Is this a broader issue? What do you think?
I think it's probably a much broader issue. I think, schooling teaches you essentially how to be an employee, but it doesn't always teach you how to be an individual and a human. And that's part of what I tried to instill in my kids is, I think one of the adages is C's get degrees. And for me, it's not about the degrees or the grades, but it's about what you do with them. And it's about, what you learn in school outside of just the classroom. I think there's more to be learned outside the classroom than there is in.
I love that. And I think there's a lot of authority to that from your background and how much education that you had to go through to be a doctor, right? So tell me more. So sorry for interrupting. That's not the last time I'll do it. I promise. So you were saying, how you got into it, you were kind of continuing when I cut you off.
So a couple of years ago, I started looking for someone ahead of me and who had the career and the family and the life, a guy 5 to 10 years ahead of me that I could emulate. And I couldn't find them. Most of the docs that I knew, were workaholics, where they were divorced or estranged from their kids or a combination of all the above. They had the income, but not the life. And I thought that's not success. That's a well-funded disaster. So I stopped following the only model I'd been given and started asking harder questions like, what would it look like to actually design my own life, and not just survive my own career?
You said a bunch of things there that, they're like, is that me? Is my work, is my career, is my profession, is the world, is social media driving too much of my life? And I'm trying to survive a life. I'm paraphrasing what you said versus designing it. Okay. So Where did you start? How do you design a life?
Yeah. So I started looking for answers outside of medicine. Because inside medicine, they weren't asking those questions. Nobody has that conversation. And I realized that the guys that had what I wanted, which is the marriage, the time with their kids, the financial freedom, they weren't necessarily doctors. They were entrepreneurs, investors, guys who had built something, and then designed their life around that instead of the other way around. Yeah. So I joined a couple of different masterminds. One of them actually, and that's how you and I know each other. And felt two things at the same time, right? I was inspired because these guys, built something that I wanted. But it's also a little bit of a, not embarrassment, but a difficult challenge because I graduated from the 26th grade. I had more schooling than they did, but they were kind of further ahead than me.
No one in the business world is really having this conversation. I think the number one role of an entrepreneur, of a leader for your employees is how are you helping people become the best version of themselves, but not just professionally, right? Holistically. So like we have a process, the purpose matrix is designed for this, but we also like internally we use that. And every week we look through, okay, do you have other goals? Like each week we have an EOS meeting. Here are your goals for our business. This is what you're going to focus on this week. But here are my quarterly rocks I've set personally, faith, family, finance, fitness, whatever it might be. And then we have an accountability system where we track those things. But I think the business world, the professional world is afraid of these things because, hey, that's not our business. There's all these negatives around that. But I think we're missing it. As the leaders of a business, I think we're missing the opportunity to have a great impact on our team members, our employees, even just our peers, to create this conversation. Because I think way more people are looking for the conversation. They just might not know it. So you went out of the industry. You found that in different organizations. What did you start to find out? What was the next step in this process?
And I think to your point, let me just come back to that a second. I think you make a great point that too many businesses separate the business person and the personal person. All right. So you have to have your business life and your work life, but then you have a home life. And people call it work-life balance, but why not consider it exactly what it is, where this is my life all integrated into one thing?
Yeah. I don't like balance. I like the words either integration or alignment, because how you go home at night from having a bad work day or the energy, whatever it is carrying over. And the morning you have from a morning routine, family environment, that's carrying over to your work life as well. It's not one or the other. There needs to be alignment and integration.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you started to design this. How did you, is this goals? Is this writing this down? Is it taking action? What did this look like next?
Yeah, I started writing down things that I believed, not necessarily for anybody else, but just for myself. What do I think about fatherhood, money, how to live, relationships? Once I had it on paper, I shared it with some friends and they loved it. And I actually wrote several years ago, I wrote something called the Mathis Manifesto, which is kind of what the information that I want to pass on to my kids and their kids. But I realized that my kids don't want to read a 35-page document of what dad's telling me, right? I don't want to listen to what my dad tells me to do.
That's not just my kids. That's your kids too?
Nope. There's all of them, I think. Well, how much did you want to listen to your dad, right? Growing up, he doesn't know anything.
Yeah.
It's funny how whenever the kids are 18, 19 years old, you know nothing. And then when they're 24, 5, 6 years old, they come to you and like, man, dad has learned a lot over the past couple of years.
So before I get to how you communicated this effectively, if that's coming to your kids, and maybe that's a work in process, what was in the I want to know what was in Dr. Mathis's manifesto though. I want to understand what was in that. What were the pieces of that? And then we can transition to how you try to teach that to your kids because they didn't want to read it.
Yeah. So as I get older, I keep seeing the same patterns, right? So how you take care of yourself, how you manage what you have, how you show up for people around you, how you have different relationships. The information that I have now, I want to pass on to my kids at 18 and 20 years old so they don't have to go through another 20 or 30 years of their life trying to learn it. And I can pass on a lot of life lessons. So
you're starting to teach them, and this is business, finance, adventure, in every area of life. You're trying to pass on to them and help them understand. I think part of it is when they're ready. Like you said, 18 to 20 years old. I think part of educating someone else, the reason, I think they will read it, the Mathis Manifesto. It might not be till they're 25 or 35 or 45. I think they'll read it. There will be a time and a place when they're ready for that. And this guy kind of knows a little bit about something. They might not be ready right now, but I think an important piece of education for ourselves and for our children, whoever it might be, is the important thing is we're educating ourselves, not always what on, or especially if we're trying to get someone else to educate themselves. What are they interested in learning about right now? At 17, they might not want to learn about money. At 24, when they're dead broke, they might want to learn about money, and it might be like, holy cow. Like for me, at 22 or 23, I picked up Rich Dad, Poor Dad. If my first educational book was something on family, I would have had no interest. Why am I reading this? This isn't helpful. Maybe I would have never read a book again. But because it was about something I was broke, right? And therefore interested, and it was a different way of thinking. I'm like, holy cow, this little book, this little piece of education can dramatically shift my mindset around a topic that I'm interested in. So if you're thinking about your kids, I think, what are they interested in right now? And let's use that as a way to teach them lessons. You talk about it with sports, right? You try to use sports to help them out.
So I coached my daughter's softball team and my son's soccer team growing up, and I would try to instill life lessons into them. For example, try something new. It's okay to fail. Try again. How do you communicate with your teammates? It's not, hey, don't do this, but tell them in a positive way. Hey, stop hogging the ball. Stop being a ball hog. That doesn't help. But hey, pass me the ball or pass him the ball. That's, he's open. That's a little bit of a different way to phrase it, but it's also how you get people and kind of persuade them to do what they want to do. And I think to your point of, finding what they're interested in and reading, actually, whenever my son was a freshman in college, I challenged him. I gave him and 4 of his friends, so 5 of them total, a book challenge. And I said, okay, I gave him a list of 10 different books, including Rich Dad, Poor Dad, How to Win Friends and Influence People, some of the bigger major books. And I said, if you read 1 book, I'll give you $25. If you read 2 books, I'll give you, the second book, I'll give you $50. Third book, I'll give you $75, up to 5 different books. But I also wanted them to give me kind of the top 10 concepts that they got from each book. So it wasn't just reading it, but it's, okay, what did you get out of that before I would get them the money? So it was good to kind of not only influence my son, but the kids that he was hanging around with.
And they read some books?
Yep. Like 2 of them read 3 books, 1 of them read 2 books, 1 of them read 1, and I think 1 guy didn't read any, which is fine. But
right.
At least they all are kind of incentivized.
So, okay, you wrote this manifesto. I think I agree. Using sports, there's so many lessons on teamwork, on communication, the ups and downs, winning and losing, what you control, what you don't control. There's so many lessons around sports that you can use as valuable life lessons. And I think, encourage, have those conversations. By the way, if you're coaching, you can do that not just with, as Jeremy said, but not just with your kids, but the other kids on the team too, that might not be, maybe they're not as fortunate as your kids. Maybe they're not as disciplined, who knows what, right? You don't know what their background is. So there's an opportunity to have a bigger impact. So how is tell me about today, I guess, what is you've worked to design this life, and I guess, how did it evolve? How did you start moving pieces around in your own life once you got clear on your priorities and work-life integration, work-life alignment? What were the shifts that you made yourself from even the process of writing this manifesto and getting clearer?
Yeah. Well, if you don't mind, I'd like to go back to the manifesto because, like I said, I didn't think they were going to read all 35 pages. So what I did is I took the concepts and I created text and graphics and sent them to my son and his roommates in college, and actually several of his friends. I sent them something every day, every morning for the first 2 years of their life. So I have about over 700 of these now. For me, it was just kind of like an email drip where, again, it was interspersed between wealth, relationships, friendships, various subjects. That way, if he's not interested in something one day, or maybe he sees something else the next day that he's very interested in, and he can always go back to what I sent him 3 weeks ago and look and reference it and say, oh, that's what he was talking about.
How much did you learn about yourself in the process of writing the manifesto?
A ton. In fact, I think I needed some of that advice more than he did at the time. So part of it's kind of me showing up for him through the things that I'm reading, but it also helps me understand the things that I'm reading, right? So in medicine, a lot of times they tell you, see one, do one, teach one. So if you're going to do, for example, a surgery, it's you watch one and then you do one and then you teach one, because you learn best through teaching. Yep.
And I think for business leaders, parents out there, think about this and start to the action right now. The simplest action is write down what you're learning or what you've learned and just write it down. I think that the habit of writing is extremely, extremely healthy. I think it can get rid of a lot of anxiousness and anxiety that exists in our culture by just, we're thinking about all these things, get it down on paper and just write, and don't overthink. To me, when I was younger, journaling was this thing that like young girls do, like my daughters would do. And I don't, but I think for adults, just write, just get an electronic notebook or a notebook and just write. I think it's so freeing. It gets our thoughts down on paper. And then we can take that over time. And honestly, with AI now, you could probably take all that and say, hey, put this together. One thing I just thought of is like for my book, I have this book and I want my kids to read it, but their favorite book right now is, man, I would encourage anyone that's interested. I'm kind of going to go on a tangent, but the Action Bible is like a comic book with the Bible stories, but it's absolutely, they want to, they're so intrigued by it. And actually a buddy of mine even said he learned more from that the first time than the actual Bible. But my point is like the text and the graphics. And my idea was I could take my book draft, put it probably into AI and say, hey, help me put this together in a story for kids that they could really simplify the lessons. The last thing I need is another project, Jeremy. I think you just gave me one, but I love that comment. So text and graphics, and then they started like, was it helpful?
Yeah, it was. In fact, one of the first ones that I sent my son was, he was thinking about taking a gap year either before, during, or after college. So I told him in the next 5 years, I want you to do 5 things. Number 1 is I want you to develop a great network of friends throughout the country and throughout the world. Number 2 is you need to learn interpersonal communication and persuasion. Number 3 is you need to learn personal finance. Number 4 is you need to learn how you learn best. So whether it's by watching YouTube, in a group, in a classroom, with a mentor, whatever it is, you need to figure that out. And then the last thing is how to think independently. Because if you don't think on your own, somebody else is going to tell you what to think and how to think. So other than that, between those 5 things, I don't really mind about his grades and my daughters at the same time, but it's, as long as they learn those 5 things, I think they're going to be successful in life. And one of the things I've been telling my kids lately is, I don't really care what career you want, right? Everybody asks, what do you want to do with your life? I'm 52 years old, so I don't know what I want to do with my life either. But I continue to encourage them, don't think about what you want to do for the next 10 years. That's what we used to do whenever I was growing up. It was, what do you want to do? Because you had a career for 20 or 30 or 40 years. And anymore, I realize that people change jobs usually every 2 to 3 years on average, maybe 4 years. So I've been suggesting to them to learn skills and to develop skills that they like and that they're good at, and just increase improve on those skills every year. And the skills, like you mentioned, that's what you're going to get hired for. You can learn whatever you need to on the job. For what skills do you like and what can you increase and improve on every single year?
The other thing I would say, and this isn't just from a professional context, is the question is that what do you want to do? You can ask that question. I think the more important question is, who do you want to be? Because you're not defined. Your identity is not your career. It's not your profession. It is who you are as a person. Like when you started the whole discussion, I introduced you as a doctor. You very quickly corrected me and said, hold on, I'm a husband and father first before that, right? So just getting clear on who you want to be. And I think who you want to be will lead to, okay, I want to be an effective leader. I want to be a great example. Well, start to study and read books around that, and you'll develop your self-awareness and become a better version of yourself.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So you've designed your life. What do you do these days? What are you up to?
Raising kids and having kids. But I'm still working on those. I'm really good at giving. I'll give you time. I'll give you knowledge. I'll help you get evacuated, if you get into an accident, get knocked out, I'll help you get evacuated on the ski slope. It's happened before, but I'm terrible at receiving. So I'm, compliments, help, opportunities. I either deflect or I immediately start calculating what I owe somebody. I think a lot of men, especially entrepreneurs, may be the same way. We build our entire identity around work, like you said. And somewhere along the way, we decide that we need, when we need something, it makes us weak. So I'm working on that. In med school, sometimes they tell you, if you can't do it, it's a weakness. So that you depend on yourself to do everything. But what I realize in the world is, kind of the division of labor. I'm not going to want to go design a pencil because somebody's already done that. So what's going to be the best use of my time and how do I do that?
How much time are you spending working with your kids? Like, give me an idea of how this has all come together.
I'm working about 3 days a week in my either surgery or medicine. But I also spend a lot of time with my kids. For example, last week we just went to Stockholm, Sweden with my son because he's doing a study abroad. And so we decided to go out and explore and get him settled in. So to take time away from work or patients or clinical setting And that to me is more important than seeing another patient.
How much of that design for the future, 3-5 years from now, can we put into place right now?
Yeah, I think a lot of it depends on seasons, right? So what season are you in? Right now, my daughter's graduating high school. My son's getting ready to graduate college next year. So my season is doing that. So most people spend more time planning a 2-week vacation than they do their entire life. So like you said, sit down and really think about what you want, what your definition of success is. Most people can also tell you what you don't want or what they don't want. They have a really difficult time telling you what they do want. So go through trying to figure out what you do want. And then from a time standpoint, I love the concept that there are times that you can do something. So for example, when I'm 70, I'm probably not going to go do a whole lot of rock climbing. All right. So I need to do that earlier in my life, but I can go golf. I can go, on cruises. I can do that kind of stuff at 70 years old. But what are the things that I can do at 30, 40, 50 years old before I get to 70? And then that's a lot of what guides my planning is what can I do now at 50 that I'm not going to be able to do at 70?
Right.
So I'm going to do that now. Likewise, there are things that I did at 30 that I probably I'm not going to be doing now.
I think it's important because I look at, people at different ages, myself included, and there's just things I used to maybe be able to do. I can't do as well now, but for sure in 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now. And by the way, what can you do based on your kids' ages too? Because those change too. If you have younger kids versus teenagers, or you can do some really challenging, physically exerting things with your kids that teach a lot when they're teenagers, maybe even early 20s, right? And if you can still do that, you're not going to be able to do that in 20 years from now. So there's great opportunities. So think about the season of life, the age you are, the age your kids are, and there's a small window of opportunity on those things. So that's, again, write those things down. And can I do these right now? And can I not do these things in 10 years from now? So I better start to take action on these 10 things that I won't be able to do in a decade from now.
And those are the kinds of things that I talk to my kids about is, my daughter in high school is like, you're never going to go to a high school football game when you're in high school again. My son, what do you want to do in college? Because once you graduate college, you're never going back and you can't be a college kid again. So those are the kind of things I start to tell them and ask them to think about too.
Yep. I love it. I love it, Jeremy. This has been great. As you look ahead, you defined what success looks like for you, but what will that look like as they grow up and as you move forward?
I think about that a lot, and a couple things. One is I don't want to leave my legacy. I want to live my legacy. And I want to be able to pass that information on to them. I don't want them to wait till I die, till I have those ideas. So what I'm going to do is I've been working on kind of an operating system and operating instructions for them so that, they kind of stand on the shoulders of giants, where I learned a lot of stuff from books and from podcasts and from, all sorts of other places. I learned from those giants, and now I'm going to try and pass on that information to them, so that they can learn from me and lessons that either I learned by myself or that I learned from other people. And you can also learn from your own experiences or other people's experiences, especially if there's pain. If there's pain, learn from somebody else's experiences and realize you don't want to go down that path sometimes.
Yeah, I love it. What I just thought of is, like, if I went back to I'll close this out with a couple of questions, but if I think back to the last half hour discussion we've had, Jeremy, if I left out the part about doctor and orthopedic surgeon, someone would never think, I don't think, they were talking to a doctor or orthopedic surgeon. I think what it says to me is that it's because it's not how you define yourself. It's not, yes, you do that, but that is not how you define your identity. And I think it, again, reflecting on our conversation, I think it just has come out so much where it's not the type of conversation I would expect to have maybe with an orthopedic surgeon. So I just appreciate your clarity. And you can tell you're clear on your priorities because you've put in the work, you've written it down, you've taught, you've learned by teaching as well. So if you kind of step back and reflect, think about what you're doing, who you are, who you're becoming, step back and reflect. How does it make you feel?
It makes you feel proud. I love doing what I do, but I also love being something more than just the physician and the surgeon.
You reference giants, books, podcasts. Outside of mine, I'm joking, but what best books, whatever area of life, whatever topic, best books, top Top one or two.
Oh man. The 5 Types of Wealth. That's a great one. Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week for efficiencies. Rich Dad, Poor Dad has probably changed a lot of people's mindsets on just how they think about money and that you should think about money. And something I tell my kids all the time is, many people say they don't want to play the money game, but yet everybody is playing the money game, whether you want to or not.
Yeah.
So realize that.
Yep. And I think the question is, how much is money influencing your life? And unfortunately, it's a tool. It's just a tool, but it sure is better if you understand how it works, understand investing, understand the money game, if you will, because there is likely implications of that on the rest, on your personal life and other areas of life. Now, if that becomes too much, that's a problem too, right? That's very clearly talked about. So, Jeremy, this has been great. How can people find out more about you, what you're doing? Anywhere you want to direct them?
Not really. You can just reach out to me through you.
All right. Deal.
No, I don't have a...
Honestly, I appreciate it. It's been great getting to know you. Dr. Jeremy Mathis. And by the way, I joke about that a little bit, but it goes back to my point. Like when we talk, you're not really Dr. Mathis to me, right? You're just Jeremy, and you're just a good guy who's really gotten clear on your priorities and what you want your life to look like, the legacy and the life you want to live, not leave. So I really appreciate it. Appreciate all the nuggets. Appreciate you coming on the show. For the Purpose Matrix, signing off.